Hi, welcome to Chapter 1, Section 3. I'm recording at 6 p.m. on a Wednesday, so the sun is coming in as it's setting. Precious. Here we go. Chapter 1, Section 3 is going to be about locating points and midpoints. All right. In Chapter 1, Section 2, you found the distance between 2 points on a line segment. Sometimes it was just they told you how long the segment was and you had to subtract or add. If it was at a jaunty angle on a grid, then you got to use the distance formula. And that was fun because it kind of looked like the slope formula. There was some squaring and adding and then square root. I kind of alluded at the end of the last video that it's very similar to the Pythagorean theorem. Now, in this lesson, you will find the midpoint of a segment. So we're not talking about lines, we're talking about segments, 2 endpoints. That's the only way you can find the midpoint, which is the middle. See, I think I skipped something. No, that's it. That's the goal, is to find the midpoint. So the midpoint on a number line is kind of nice because you don't have a y and an x, you just have an x, okay? So the middle of 2 points, you can always count into the middle, but I don't know if you realize this. When you average 2 numbers, you're actually finding the measure of central tendency, and that's the middle of the 2 numbers. So in geography, you get to actually see how that works, because remember, if you have 2 numbers and you average them, then you add them together and divide by 2. The midpoint formula on a number line looks just like this, where you add the 2 endpoints, the number that goes with it, like if it's 3 and 5, the midpoint would be 4. You could just see that the middle of 3 and 5 is 4. That's the middle number. To use the midpoint formula, you would add the endpoints, 3 and 5, and get 8, and divide by 2, and it would give you 4. Okay, so if it's obvious and you can see the middle, you don't have to use the formula. But if the numbers are really far apart, you can use the formula, or if there's fractions involved. Okay, the midpoint formula in a coordinate plane, now that is a little bit more complicated. And let me get the laser printout so you can see what I'm pointing at. So this is more like, okay, I've got 2 ordered pairs. X1, Y1 would be P, X2, Y2 is Q. And if you draw it on a grid, then you won't be able to just count over to find the middle. If you could use the slope, and if you went halfway down and then halfway over, that would be the middle. Or if you started down here and you went, like, in other words, if I was going to go all the way over to P, then I would go all the way over and then all the way up. But for the middle, I would go halfway over and then halfway up. And that's what the midpoint formula does for you. It helps you find the middle of the 2 x's, so x1 and x2. And hopefully you were used to finding x1, y1, x2, y2 when you used the slope formula last year. So that's why I'm just like assuming that nomenclature. Alrighty, so you take the 2 x's from the 2 endpoints, and you add them together and divide by 2, and that'll give you the x coordinate of the midpoint. You do the same thing with the y values. You add the 2 y's together and divide by 2, and that'll give you the y coordinate of the midpoint. So when you're doing the midpoint formula on a coordinate plane, it's like you have 2 problems in one, because first you have to do it for the x's and you have to do it for the y's, and you have to realize that the answer is an ordered pair. So how about some examples? So I think I didn't give examples of the easy one on the number line, so hopefully that's good. Here's one where I need to find the coordinates of a midpoint M of the segment GH. So notice the symbol on the top of the letters GH. It doesn't have arrows on the end, so that means it's going to be a line segment. And it's giving me the endpoints G and H, and it's giving me the ordered pairs X1, Y1, and X2, Y2. And that's what they said. They're decided, and it doesn't matter as long as you're consistent. So they're saying, okay, point G, I'm going to call that one X1, Y1, and point H, I'm going to call that X2, Y2. So first I'm just going to show you how you would use the formula to solve this. They just stuffed it all in there. So since G was X1 was 8, they put that in here for the X coordinate of the midpoint. For H, X2 was negative 14, and laser pointer back, and that goes in here. All right, so if you add those two, 8 plus negative 14, hopefully you get negative 6. That'll be on the next step. And then to substitute this, they did, they used Y1 is negative 6, and Y2 was 12. Okay, that's where those numbers came from. So when they added 8 plus negative 14, they got negative 6. When they added negative 6 plus 12, they got 6. And you could have fraction answers. Those are hard to graph. You don't always have to graph these. But these came out nice. They're whole numbers when you divide them. So they went ahead and divided them. All right, so how would you do this if you were graphing? You get to watch me draw with my pen again. So if I wanted to graph point G, I would go over 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to make a little more so I can remember where that was. And then I need to go down 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 8, negative 6 ends up to be right about here, and I'm going to call that point G. Point H, I have to count 14 to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 is here. And 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So to graph point H that on the coordinate plane, I have to go over 14 and up 12 and put a point. And that is H. Okay, hopefully there's an option to draw a line. I don't think there is. Oh my, I'm going to draw a line. Okay, I got this. It's not going to be pretty. So if I were to graph these 2 points, this is going to be amazing, and it's going to be on video. Oh no. Definitely didn't do a straight line, did I? You know what? That's okay, because I understand Algebra 1 and I understand how lines work. And to go from point H to point G, I would have to go down and over a certain number. I'm showing you this because this is an alternate way of getting to the answer. Oops. Okay, so if I go down, how far would I have to go down to get there? I would go, let's see, the y coordinate of H was 12. So to go this far down, I would have gone 12 units down. And then to go the rest of the way, I'm going to go a total of 6 more. So that is 18. I went that way. Okay, to get over to G, I will, okay, so the x coordinate of H was negative 14. This way I don't have to count them again, okay? So to go this far, I will have gone 14 units. And then to get all the way over to G, I have to go 8 more. So I went this way, 14 plus 8. I went 22 units this way. All right, so this is like the way I'm cheating to find the midpoint between the 2 points. Okay, I'm just gonna go down halfway. So I'm gonna go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 units. And then instead of going over 22, I'm gonna go over 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So you can see how far off my line was. I was a little bit off. If you have graph paper and a ruler, this way of cheating is like super nice. So this point right here that I got, this is point M because I went down 9 halfway down, and then I went over 11 halfway back. If I started here and I went over 11 and up 9, I would end at the same point because it's the midpoint. Guess what the ordered pair is? The ordered pair is 1, 2, 3, -3, up 3. Does that sound familiar? It should, because that was the answer. Let me take off my pen and go back and show you. Look, the answer we got using the formula was -3, 3. So if you're good at the formula, you like it, and sometimes you don't have a choice because the numbers are too weird, you can't graph it, well then do it this way. If you're like, oh, I hate adding, subtracting negatives, and I have a bunch of graph paper, or I could print graph paper or whatever, well then you could do it this way. Just thought I would expand your horizons and let you know about that. Okay, now this one's a little bit different. It's the same formula, but they are going to ask us for the midpoint. So it says find the coordinates of D if E is given as -6, 4, and it's the midpoint. Why did they call it E? I don't know. Let me write myself a little note. That is the midpoint. I don't know if you can read that, but this is my note to myself. Note to self, E is the midpoint, because I wish they would have called it M. All right, so the midpoint of DF, and they're giving me F. So it's super awkwardly worded, of course, because it's a math book. Find the coordinates of D if E is the midpoint of DF, and F has coordinates -5, 3. Hopefully we're going to graph this. Okay. So they're just going to start right off using the formula. This is how the book explains it. And then at the end, I'm going to show you a graph of that, okay? Just to kind of like cement it a little bit. So D and F, remember, are the endpoints of some segment, and E is in the middle. Kind of makes sense, D, E, F. Okay, fine. I'll give them that. So D is X1, Y1, and I don't know it. That's what I'm looking for. F is X2, Y2. Oof. Okay, let me make that go away because that was too scary. So D, I don't know. That's what I'm looking for. F is given, and it's -5, -3. So grabbing the pen. So this is X2, and this is Y2. Okay. What have they done? You know what they did? They said, okay, well, I have the answer. The answer is -6, 4. I already know the midpoint. The X coordinate of the midpoint, let me see if I have it there. Okay, good. So the X coordinate of the midpoint is -6. I'm just missing one of the endpoints. Remember the endpoints versus the midpoint. Okay. So this is how you could set it up. You could say like, well, I know that E is -6, 4. They gave it to me. I also know that E could be written as this, like substituting the formula X1 plus X2. See, they did that. See what they did there? They put X2 here, and they put Y2 here. Okay, that's what they were doing. Just substituting it in the formula to see what they had. And I say just, and I'm spending a lot of time on this because normally these are the ones that sometimes kids skip them because they're like, I don't know. Okay, so hopefully this will help a little bit because you could rewind and hear me make funny noises. Okay, so these are the two equations that you end up with. Since the X coordinate of E is -6, and since this will give you the X coordinate of the midpoint, you can set them equal to each other. And since this is given as the Y coordinate of the midpoint, and I know the Y coordinate of the midpoint is 4, then I can set those two up to each other. And now I have two different equations that are easy. They're not easy. I'm not going to say they're easy, but that are solvable. So I could find X1 and Y1, because remember, I'm trying to find D, so I need to find X1 and I need to find Y1. How are your algebra powers? Can your algebra powers tell you when you see this equation that you need to multiply both sides by 2, hopefully? Otherwise, I'm telling you. Okay, this is what it looks like. To solve this, they got this because they multiplied both sides by 2. When you multiply, let me grab that pen again. To do this, this is what it looks like. When you multiply this side by 2, it doesn't feel like anything happened, but something huge happens. The 2 in the denominator is canceled and it liberates the numerator. So that's why this next step, you only see x1 minus 5 equals negative 12, because when you multiply those two, you get negative 12. And then it's a one-step equation. All you have to do is add 5 to the other side, and you found x1 is negative 7. Okay, so the same thing happens. Now you have to do it twice. So there's so many ways that you could mess up here. There's adding negatives. You have to do it twice. Some people might get x1 correct and then forget to find the rest of the formula. I mean, the rest of the endpoint, the y coordinate. So same deal. You multiply both sides by 2. So the left side, you'll end up with 8. And on the right side, the denominator's gone. And now you just add 3 to the other side and you get 11 for the y coordinate of the other endpoint. So the answer is the coordinates of D are negative 7, 11. 7, 11. Okay. Whew. So after all that talking, now I'm going to show you the cheating way of doing it. And when the midpoint is missing, most people like to do it this way. Okay. So grabbing that pen. So find the coordinates of D if E is the midpoint. Again, I need to remind myself that that's the midpoint of DF, and this is F. So F is one of the midpoints, is one of the endpoints. Okay, I'm going to graph F first. So F is at negative 5, negative 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. F is one of the endpoints. Okay. I will just call this puppy F. E is the midpoint. So I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. E is the midpoint. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Like, in other words, okay, I'm terrible at drawing straight lines without a line tool. Maybe after a while I'll figure out how to do that, but at this point I don't. So I'm like, okay, so from here to here, it never happened. Just kidding, that never happened. Let me use the laser pointer. So from here to here, there's a straight line, and it's half of a line segment. So if I keep going, I'll find the other half of the line segment. I don't need to draw the pretty line. I just need to know what is the other end point, that's D. So here you go. Algebra. I went up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I went up 7 from F to E. Yeah. And then I went over 1. So I went up 7. And then I went over 1. I'm not going to write that because it's too small, and you will remember that. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to do it again. Go up 7 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And over 1. Ding, ding, ding. I found D. Don't make me draw it. The line segment is a very steep line segment in this half of the page, but I don't care. I just need to know the answer. What are the coordinates of D? D is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I went over 7. And then I went up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Does that answer sound familiar? It should, because that's the answer we just got a minute ago. I'll show ya. Look, We took all of 2 pages of steps to get to negative 711 to find the coordinates of the endpoint. But if you graph it and they give you an endpoint and a midpoint, it's kind of easier just to do rise over run, because that's how slope works for lines. This is a line segment, which is part of a line. That was pretty neat. Okay, and there's going to be some like this. And every time on the test, it's easy to forget how to do it, because in the last assignment you did, you had segment addition postulate, where you were given 2 parts, and then you were given, like, with algebra, and then you're giving, oh, the total length is 17, and then each part is like 2x and 3x plus 5, and then you would set them up where they added up and they equaled a total. Well, here, don't miss the keyword midpoint. Okay, if Q is the midpoint of PR, then that means that it's in the middle. I know, right? So if you did segment addition postulate, you could say 6 minus 3x plus 6 minus 3x equals 14x plus 2, and then solve for x. It's not asking me for x, but I have to find x in order to answer the question. Or I could say half of 14x plus 2, half of that would equal 6 minus 3x. It just depends how your brain works. Both are good. Let's see what the book decided to do. They're explaining it a bit. You know that Q is the midpoint of PR, and the figure gives algebraic measures for QR and PR. You were asked to find the measure of PR. So you're trying to find the whole length. But first you have to find x. Once you find x, you could multiply it by 14 and add 2, and that'll give you the length of PR. Oh, I thought it was going to do it for me. I'm going to do it then. Okay, so right here, let me get out my pen. And I would survey the class at this point and say, which would you rather do? Would you rather say that half of PR equals QR because of the midpoint, since Q's in the middle, the length of half of this equals this part? Or would you rather say 2 of these, 6 minus 3x, equals the whole thing, 14x plus 2. Whoa, I'm a good writer on math. Okay? If you do it this way, that's the same thing as if you said 6 minus 3x plus 6 minus 3x. So you would get 12 minus 6x. I'll just write that. You would get this. 12 minus 6x equals 14x plus 2, and then you would solve for x. If I do it this way, what's half of PR? PR is the whole thing, and that is 7x plus 1. Since they're even numbers, I could do it this way, and the numbers are smaller. So half of this is 7x plus 1, and that's going to equal the length of this, because QR is half of PR. So in this one, if you're solving this one already in your head, you added the 6x over here and you got 20x. You subtracted the 2 over here and you got 10. So you would have gotten x equals 10 over 20, which is a half. Let's see what we get on this side. I'm going to add this 3x out of here because it's bugging me. I want it to be with the 7x so they can be friends. Okay, 10x plus 1 equals 6. And then I subtract 1. Are you getting stressed? Is it going to equal half? Better. 10x equals 5. And then the most common wrong answer would be x equals 2. A lot of times when people see this, they do that. Their brain does that to them. So mean. When you divide by 10, you get x equals 1/2. And I know that fractions are my friends, so I write my answer like that. But if you write x equals 0.5, I won't judge you. Alrighty then. So, as you saw, that is the oh, is that the answer? I almost did the rookie mistake. That's not the answer. They're asking me to find the measure of PR. And you can write it like this, PR. If you don't want to write out the word measure because you're writing with a mouse pointer, you can do that. If I don't put the symbol on top, that means the distance between P and R, which is the same thing as the measure of PR, the length of PR. PR equals 14 times X plus 2. Well, X is half. So if this stresses you out to write 1/2, we'll just write 0.5 and grab a calculator. But I'm thinking half of 14 is 7. I can do that in my head. So PR is going to equal 7 plus 2. So PR equals 9, my final answer, and I will box it up. Oh gosh, that's a 9. I hope your work isn't this messy. It's going to be hard for me to read it, but I will. Okay, so, woo. Next slide. That is the end of lesson 1.3, locating points and midpoints.